this train.
All right. Welcome, guys, to another Note to File Live. It is Tuesday. It already feels like it's been an extremely long week somehow. I'm going to go ahead and drag our guest up here, Rick Greenfield. Rick, how's it going, man?
Great, Brad. How you doing?
Oh, I've been better, but it's this crazy all around. This business we've for some reason decided to be in.
It
Some
is
days are
crazy.
hard.
No
Some days are
question
harder
about
than others.
it. Every day is a new surprise, right?
Indeed, that's what keeps it fun, though, right?
So I got to ask, was everybody else hearing the song "This Train" or was that just me?
Yeah. No, it's played that. I love old blues. Big Bill Brunsey, one of my favorite old blues musicians.
If I'm not mistaken, Bradley Noel did a version of that song, and I've
He
never
did,
heard
yeah. Actually,
it just played, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Bradley Noel did this.
that was funny. I considered using that one, and that's actually where I first heard the song. Even though I know it's obviously a really old
Cool.
traditional song. So no, that's fun. I have all those old Sublime acoustic albums, so that's a
Amazing stuff.
good call.
I feel cultured already.
Well, try to have a little fun with it. It doesn't always have to be just a dry, boring conversation. Throw in some fun music and have fun with it. Well, if you haven't seen or listened to, we did a podcast with Rick previously. It's at notefilepodcast.com. Most people probably know who Rick is, but if you don't, Rick, just tell everybody just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. It's a fun story. It's 22 years in the making. Basically started out owning and operating a very small site that turned into one of the largest multi-specialty clinical research sites in the country. And on that journey, really decided that we needed some better technology to help us run the business. So we started, first and foremost, I looked for technology in the marketplace and just couldn't find really what I was looking for. And my background is in information systems and had the crazy idea to just start building something. So started working with a developer, and we started building what is now today RealTime CTMS and all the things included with that. What we now call our SOMS system, which includes CTMS, TextPay, eDocs, eSource. We now have the Engage set of solutions, the mobile app, the Outlook integration. And we're starting to, create some new tools that we can leverage into the sponsor CRO world, always keeping sites at the forefront of our thoughts. And, I really came into this technology world wanting to help solve solutions for sites, and I'm not going to lose sight of that goal, and continue to help improve the work streams and really the lives of the people that are on the ground floor, seeing the patients and collecting the data. And I'll just say this, I feel like historically, for some odd reason, sites get the least consideration in this process, and I feel like they should get the most consideration, right? It's where the rubber meets the road, as I like to say. And so, we need to really think about the site staff and the processes that are so critical to meeting regulations, meeting protocol requirements, collecting great data. Oh, let's don't forget about the patients as well, right? So just trying to make sure that we're supporting that ecosystem as best we can.
Yeah, and you're obviously preaching to the choir here. As somebody who's worked at the site level, their whole lives. Obviously, this is a big, crazy, chaotic industry, but I'm with you. I feel like oftentimes sites are kind of overlooked or sort of placed at the sort of bottom of the food chain, and ultimately, you can talk about DCTs, but for the time being, you got to have sites to run trials, right? I mean, you need your boots on the ground, and really, the better their workflows are. The easier it is for them, the better it is for everybody, right? And that includes all the way down to the patient. So, again, still a battle. I think we're fighting very much. I know there's a lot of topics we want to cover today. I want to jump in. Actually, I'm going to start with a comment that came in before this even started. Also, if you're watching, feel free to throw comments in. I love getting some engagement from the audience, but someone had wanted us to talk a little bit about, and I'm curious what you've seen in terms of uptake in eSource usage for sites. I know it's still something, I've used RealTime for a while now. I love it. I've still been hesitant to go full e-source for a number of different reasons, beyond just practicality. We're going to talk a little bit about data ownership and some of those things, but are you seeing apprehension, or are you seeing more aggressive uptake in sites using eSource, or what's the landscape look like right now?
Well, it started out with the early adopters. I guess I don't even really necessarily know why some people were so eager to jump into eSource, but there definitely was a bunch of sites that really, really wanted it and dove in and didn't care how well it was going to be accepted or what the costs were. And they just were all in. And I'm so thankful for those folks. I mean, certainly we had a vision. I had a vision really before there were any e-source solutions on the market to bring something to market that would allow for electronic data collection. And then, of course, it took a long time to build something and actually have something available for our customers. I think I was actually surprised at how well it was accepted in our industry by sponsors, monitors, CROs. And I think at this point, we really, truly are breaking through any of the remaining resistance that's out there. Because I think when you look at the resistance, what might it be? It's probably concern that a sponsor / CRO / monitor is not going to accept it. Perhaps that the FDA doesn't accept electronic data and that it meets Part 11 compliance and things of that nature. I feel like we've pretty much knocked that hurdle down. It's widely accepted. I think even more so, it's becoming desired because of the ability to do remote monitoring of the data, to be able to query the data electronically and have a data trail of queries and resolutions of those queries. Huge benefits to the sponsors and CROs that use the product. I think it's less of an issue. The other big barrier, of course, would be cost. I feel like eSource is wildly affordable. In fact, if you consider what the cost of eSource is and what you can easily add into your budget and what most of our customers are doing to add into their budget for this electronic solution, they're actually receiving more compensation for eSource than they're paying. So essentially it becomes a profit center for them. Quite substantially in some cases. And so, the sponsors, again, they see the value. So if they have to spend, I'll just say in general, a couple $1,000s to have this solution in place that gives them this remote access and this monitoring portal, it's well worth it to them. And so I think we've knocked down the cost hurdle as well. So at this point, if people are not getting in, I think we're seeing less of the psych world getting in because of rater scales and copyright issues around rater scale. I think we've been able to solve a lot of that up to this point, but there's still some challenges there that we're working through. But for the most part, there's really, in my opinion, I know I'm a little biased, Brad, but I think there really aren't any big barriers to it. And I honestly think that sites that at some point are continuing to be resistant to eSource might be considered to be, less technologically advanced, and sponsors and CROs may want to work with them less if they aren't using this technology.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think for at least for me, I'm not as worried anymore about sponsor acceptance. I'm not really worried about cost per se. Where I get worried is just in the sheer logistics with an aging physician population and different levels of tech savviness. That's probably right, and that varies wildly, I think, across sites depending on their size. And
well, let's address that. I mean, you actually brought up, I didn't think of that, but you're right. The implementation and the challenges of perhaps physicians or even older staff members who are not as savvy with technology. I think that's where change management does come into place. But, when you first start using eSource and you start modifying your processes, it's going to slow you down a little bit. And that's the part that I think that hurts the most, is that initial transition. Now, instead of, doing what you do every day on paper, I've got to figure out how to get this, iPad or laptop working and do everything I normally do on paper in an electronic world. But the other side of that is, and I talk to sites every day that are like, man, we would never go back to paper. This is far more efficient. the physicians. Of course, RealTime, I have to say, is the only solution that has a mobile app. And that is crazy important for the physicians to be able to get push notifications of anything that needs review, to be able to perform review on their phone or laptop, and then be able to sign documents with their face or fingerprint. This makes them far more efficient as investigators. It makes it easier for you to collaborate with them and for them to provide oversight throughout their busy day while they're seeing patients or whatever they may be doing. And so, Brad, you bring up such a great point. And another major concern is that change management, but you kind of have to get hard-headed. You have to have someone at your site or network that's ready to help kind of take that challenge on with the staff and help to promote the product and get everybody using it. And then I do believe once you're on the other side of it, you wonder how you ever survived without it.
Yeah, and I do believe that. And I've seen that with other things we've done at the site level. I feel, and I don't know, again, just me, it feels like a very particularly big change to make. Not even change, but again, just managing that as you go and having to really just, it's like you said, you need somebody to just kind of slap everybody around. It's like, hey, man, we're doing this. We're pulling the Band-Aid off. Shut up and get over it. Yeah, it's going to be painful, maybe in the very beginning while we get, all these different processes changed a little bit. And, if you're a small site, you're just keeping your head above water and rolling the studies you've got. So that can be challenging. And maybe it's just a matter of timing too, being able to time that out.
I'll tell you a funny story for entertainment purposes here. Maybe not one of my best moments, but I was on the phone with a customer who was having issues getting their staff to adopt eSource, and after they described the whole situation to me and said, they just won't use it, and it kind of got a little heated and maybe a little bit of an argument, and then the customer finally asked me, "What do I think the problem is?" And maybe I should have used a better filter, but I said, honestly, the problem is you. You're the manager of this site, right? You're the owner of this site. And at some point you ask, and then at some point you tell, right? And we're moving to this solution, folks. I'm not asking you. I'm saying this is what we're doing, so we have to use it. Hopefully you don't have to use that heavy of a hand, but sometimes change management does really require a strong managerial support, and you've got to push it down to the staff and really say, hey, we got to do it, guys.
Yeah. And again, I don't even disagree with that. I think it's, even for me, I just got to pull the Band-Aid and be like, this is what we're doing. And again, I'm mostly concerned. I'm not as concerned with employees as I am PIs who get you. I mean, frankly, look, a lot of PIs are very coddled. And I don't mean that as a shot against the PIs, because, we want them to be treating their patients and doing their jobs and, obviously providing good oversight, but making it simple. And frankly, when a lot of these guys have been doing it since residency for 30 years, and it's been somebody shoving a piece of paper in front of them with sticky notes on it. So, to switch that up can be, but it's the same. I think, they're all used to using EMR. They're all used to charting things electronically. It should be a pretty easy pitch at this point. But that brings up its own questions, right? So if I put source on paper, I've got it in a nice tidy little binder in my office. It's mine. I got it. I own it. It's not going anywhere. I'm not worried about it. What happens to eSource? Who owns that data? What happens to that data? I've always actually wondered why we can't just do direct data capture straight into EDCs. But that's, people have brought up the issue of like, well, the site needs to be the one who really owns, that's their data, not the EDC vendor, right? So how does eSource? It sounds to me like eSource kind of bridges that gap, right?
Well, definitely. EDC systems have places to put data points, but source data is really how you validate those data points and all the data around those data points. How were they collected? When were they collected? Of course, showing and demonstrating a compliance with the protocol procedures and whatnot. And so, what you see in eSource is not just that I'm going to take a blood pressure. So I have two boxes, a systolic and diastolic blood pressure to put in. I have all the notes to the coordinator, make sure that the patient is seated for 5 minutes. Which arm are you going to choose? Which, the index arm, and then you code in the arm. Then you take the blood pressure. confirming that you've done the 5-minute wait, and then you collect your systolic and diastolic blood pressure values and put them in, and then you put those in EDC as well. But at the end of the day, the monitor, the CRO is responsible for validating and source verifying that the data that's in the EDC is there accurately and for the right reasons, and was collected, based on the protocol requirements. And so I think that's why source is so valuable. It's valuable, obviously, to the FDA and to statisticians to be sure that the data that they're receiving and that they're making judgments about the efficacy and safety of the drug are based on the actual protocol. All that to say that the site owns their data. Now you put it in a system that obviously, in the case of RealTime, you're paying RealTime for all of this technology and your ability to create these advanced source documents and enter in this data. It's absolutely your data. And if you decide for whatever reason that you need to move on down the line to a different solution, you get to take your data with you 1,000,000%. So, I think that as it relates to eSource data, that's highly understood in our industry. I think where we are seeing some cloudiness is data that is really more CTMS focused, operationally focused, financially focused. And we've had some challenges with vendors out there not being willing to provide data to customers that are leaving their system, which I have a huge issue and concern with from an ethical perspective. I pride myself and really RealTime as a result of that on very high ethics. I think it transcends our industry. It's not just clinical research where customers use technology and then may want to switch from this technology to that technology. And so it's really kind of this SaaS-based world of when customers need to transition their business over to a different technology, what does that look like? How do they get their data? How do they take that data from one system to another? And so I feel like it's something that we need to be talking about as an industry on what are those ethical boundaries that we all need to play within. For me, it's if a customer wants their data, they get it. They get it 100%. They get every single bit of it. It's fully relatable and they can take it anywhere they want to go. Unfortunately, it's not working the other way for us. And so, it's definitely something I'm on a soapbox about right now.
Well, and that's painful enough for a site because we did it. We actually started with RealTime. We left for a little while. We came back to RealTime. That's already a lot of pressure and, again, pain points on a site to make the switch, learn a new system. Hopefully it all converts into a new system or, can be, used in any practical way. But then to have to actually fight or pay a bunch of extra money or whatever the case is just for the data that you already, ostensibly own, right? That's, again, what are we doing? At what point, what kind of point are we trying to make by not letting the sites have their data? What good is it doing anyone?
It's doing no good. And it's like, well, what are you trying to hold this customer hostage into your own system so they can't leave? Obviously, that doesn't fare well for you. To me, let's don't do any harm to customers, to patients, right? Obviously to our clients, the sponsors who are needing this data. So I feel like it's in everyone's best interest. Obviously it's on me, it's on RealTime to keep our customers happy and keep them wanting to use our system. If we fail in that mission and they decide they want to leave us, of course I'm sad. It's a super bummer, but okay, we're gonna help you move. We're gonna help you transition, and we're gonna make sure that you can maintain a continuity of business in your transition. And I think that's just pure ethics, Brad.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And I will say, I use RealTime, and they've had by far the best customer service of any, CTMS system I've used. So I can appreciate that. And you guys definitely seem to, walk the walk when it comes to that. So I do appreciate that. Let's hit a couple questions here.
Sure.
So, just sort of staying in the same vein here, sites are the ones in charge of document storage. They have to pay for that, even contractually. If they're responsible contractually, doesn't that give them the right to it as owners? Between, our contract with sponsors say that, but, it's maybe not as clear in the contract with the CTMS vendor that we're working with. And I mean, I'll be honest, I admit this all the time. I'm not always the most detail oriented guy, which is probably not a good admission to make as somebody who's in research. So I think read your contract real close, but I mean, again, I don't know what good it does a CTMS vendor to hold you hostage, to use your phrase. Certainly not going to make any friends, right?
Well, I do think that that is something for everyone to consider when you're signing up with a CTMS vendor. There should be language that clearly states that this is your data and that you can receive your data in full upon request. You will find that in a real-time agreement. I guess it's not in other agreements. And so I'm also a little surprised when we get into these situations that people don't lawyer up a little faster, because I know I sure would have as a site owner if I wasn't able to receive the data that I felt was truly mine. But, making sure that it's in your contract is certainly a great starting point.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, sites, and again, this is where I feel like sometimes sites are at a disadvantage, especially small sites, because I can't go pay a bunch of attorneys to go read every word of every contract that comes through. Now maybe I should.
Important one, Brad. I would pay an attorney for this one. This is an important
I was
one.
going to say, there obviously, you need to choose wisely if you're under that, under that limitation. But certainly we don't. I mean, for a solution that's really site focused, it sucks for it to contain anything predatory or to not be really focused on the site. So I don't know that I've experienced that directly at this point, but I could see that being an issue, and especially as we're seeing more people come to market who really don't or haven't been in clinical trials, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe don't understand or appreciate that it's sort of maybe a different space than a regular, SaaS company. Maybe that's fair to say.
Well, yeah. And I think the other thing that we're seeing, though, I mean, I'm very proud to say we've lost very few customers who left us on their own free will. Like the Brad Hightowers of the world, but thankfully you came back, and I'm so glad you did. But when we lose customers, oftentimes it's through acquisition. They get acquired by a network that's utilizing another vendor, and they don't have a choice; they have to switch. And so, I think that it could be just pure naivety. It could just be something they weren't even preparing for, didn't think about, and now all of a sudden they're being faced with it, and we're having to go through this difficult transition. And the first thing you're going to need to be successful is your data to get that transferred over. It's still a lot of work. It's still very challenging. You still have to relate all that data and migrate it into a new system in a usable way. So it's not like it's easy, even if you do get your data, but certainly if you don't have the full data, then we can't relate it and we can't make it usable for you.
Yeah, I think it's been encouraging to me to see, because I think part of the problem is not just in like the CTMS world, but like a lot of this stuff is really sort of black boxed. Like sites have no idea until you start using it, and by then it's sort of like too late. You know what I mean? So I'm a little bit encouraged. Even you, I know that Ray from Creo came on and talked. I mean, there's more transparency, I think, or at least willingness to sort of talk and show and tell, I guess, right? So that people do have a good idea of what they're getting into before they do. Because generally, you don't have a lot of an idea unless you sit through basically a sales presentation, right? And otherwise, and then by then, if you signed up, then you're probably stuck for a while, because it is painful to move. You don't want to move 3 months later and be like, well, shit, I chose the CTMS. It's fine. It just doesn't work great for me. I'd rather use this other system. And now you've got to go through a whole rigmarole just to get your data moved over.
So very true. I mean, when you think about what RealTime offers, it's like, I don't even like saying CTMS anymore, because we don't really sell a CTMS. We sell a complete package of products that all work intertwined together. And so, you were talking about moving into eSource. Well, I mean, imagine also utilizing eDocs as your ISF, which is fully integrated with your CTMS, and then being able to upload a new ICF document. We have version control. So this is the third version of your ICF. It automatically routes out to all of your enrolled patients. We have different ways to route them. It could be based on language. It could be based on other factors. It routes out to the patients automatically. Now the coordinator comes into their calendar. I've got a visit today. As soon as they open that visit up, it alerts them. You have a new consent that needs to be signed today. Then they execute that. We have e-consent now, so they could execute it electronically, or they could do it on paper and upload it. And then they click another button and they launch into their source. And so we're creating entire ecosystem of products that are fully intertwined and manage the process of, recruitment, the very beginning, all the way to participants completing the study, and, data collection, document management, everything in between. And so your point is well taken, that it's a lot to evaluate, to learn and understand how all this is going to fit into your environment and with your staff. You have to dedicate a lot of time to it. And that's just looking at us. Then you got to go look at my competitors and decide who you actually want to go with. But you're so right that it is a critical decision, and you should invest the time, because one of the things you can say about CTMS, and here I go using the term again, is that it is one of the stickiest products in the world, because once you get a site ingrained in using all of your products, even if they're not happy, and I guarantee you there's people on this show right now that are using something they're not happy with, they don't want to leave because of the pain that they're going to have to go through to transition. It's easier to just stick with what you got. And so it's better if you can make the right decision the first time instead of having to make that tough decision down the road.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to sort of fall into a little bit of the sunk cost fallacy as a site, because it is. And again, the longer you use it, just the worse it gets, the more intertwined you are. One word I keep hearing a lot of is interoperability. I mean, is that, or where do you see that, or do you see that happening realistically, where, let's say I love half of what RealTime offers, right? But maybe I like this other ISF platform. I'd love it if I could get them to work together, talk together. I mean, is that a realistic future, not just for RealTime, but for, I guess, the ecosystem as a whole? I mean, I feel like I keep hearing it come up. Haven't really seen a ton of great strides yet, though, maybe that's just takes time. But is that realistic to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less realistic that we're going to connect up to another ISF. Of course, again, being incredibly biased, I don't know why you would use another ISF when you consider how integrated our eDoc system is with all the other products and all the incredible efficiencies that you can have with that. Even if another ISF is really good, you're not going to get all those other efficiencies and connectivities. I'll get off that soapbox and just say, we're probably not going to invest in connecting to Viva's ISF or Florence's ISF or that. But what I think a lot of people are looking for interconnectivity is not necessarily connecting different site solutions. There are some examples of that. Of course, we connect with Devana, we connect with SubjectWell, Aspen Insights for EMR integration. So there are some of those types of integrations that we look at. And then we connect with other recruitment companies to be able to do lead deployment or delivery into our CTMS. But I think what a lot of people are looking for is more integration with sponsor level systems. Could we connect ISF up to eTMF? Now, that would be amazing if we could do that, right? Now, there are vendors out there that they have an eTMF and they have an ISF, but they really have kind of siloed their connectivity to just their own systems. And that's a bummer.
Yeah, I'm constantly confused by why you've got everything on your side. Why can't I have it, please? Instead of having to search through a bunch of disparate emails to hopefully find the most current version of the thing that I may or may not have gotten copied on, right? Like, why haven't we figured that out?
I think it will happen. It's going to just take some minds to be opened a little bit to, I think, the bigger possibility of if we can embrace interconnectivity, I think it actually brings more value to your product, and you'll probably be even more successful. I'll spill the beans and say that, we are going to develop some of these sponsor type solutions, and I'm not just going to have them only connect to RealTime. I'm going to have open API connectivity for any of my competitors that want to join up and join into our system. They will have the ability to do that. And, I believe that our sponsor solution has tons more value to the sponsor if it can connect to just more than just one other system. I'm working with 100 sites. Well, 20 of them use Viva, 20 of them use RealTime, 20 of them use Creo. it's great that the Viva ones can connect, but what about all these other guys, right?
Right.
And so we want everyone to be able to connect, and that's when we start really creating an ecosystem that's meaningful, I believe.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think I still have a certain amount of cynicism that everyone's going to play nice enough, rather than just try to shoehorn into their own platform, which I can't even necessarily blame them for. But I guess I'll remain skeptical, but cautiously optimistic that we'll see that
Well, you know what,
happen.
Brad? I might have said this in our last show. I love to say it. If those folks are right, that they can own both sides of the equation. They can have all the sponsor solutions, and therefore, I guess all the sponsors, and they're going to have the site solutions. I guess they're going to have all the sites. Then I guess that means the next time we go to the Site Solution Summit, there's just going to be one booth, right?
Right. Yep. We'll see. We'll see.
I don't
Here's a
think
good
that.
question. I don't think it's going to happen either, but again, it can be, I think, frustrating because again, I feel like it's like choosing between Android and iOS, right? Like you're kind of stuck with one, and there are good things and bad things about both of them. And again, maybe that's just the
Yeah.
way it is. You're gonna have to pick an ecosystem and live in it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that has to be the case, because even then there's a lot of stuff you can do in both, right? So again, I think we'll get more mature as things move along. This is something that's interesting to me, the sort of EMR CTMS integration. I know you guys work with what is it, Aspen Insights? Is that who it is?
Yep. Mhm.
So talk a little bit about that. I've got my own opinions, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about the integration for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to hear your opinions, honestly. But I think that the first question I always ask a customer is, what are you wanting to get out of an EMR integration? And oftentimes, what they perceive the benefits of that integration to be are not really. I think they just haven't really thought it all the way through, quite honestly. The reality is that your EMR has probably far more patients in it than you would ever have in your research database or your CTMS. And that's just pure statistics. Only about 20, maybe 25% of any given population is even willing to participate in a clinical trial. So, there's no reason to put the entire EMR database into your CTMS. So but mining your EMR database for potentially qualified subjects, now that is some value. And we know there's some big companies out there doing this. And, but you're also talking about mining ICD-10 codes, which are just, mind boggling. And then you have lots of other types of structured and unstructured data in EMR. It can be very difficult to really be able to parse that data and turning it into something meaningful that we can determine if a patient might be a qualified participant or not. And so that's really the biggest problem that we're trying to solve with Aspen Insights, is that they are a EMR mining service, and it's really amazing. Like, they can mine everything, structured, unstructured data. That means doctors' notes, literally words and sentences that are in their patient notes and records.
Usually where the actual truth lies, more in the unstructured data than in, what are essentially a lot of the rest is just for billing. It's not really telling you that much about a patient, but that unstructured data has got the gold in it more often than not.
Well, exactly. And just because someone has an ICD-10 code that, says they have some form of diabetes or whatever, I mean, when you look at how doctors are billing and why they're billing certain codes, it doesn't really mean a whole lot as it relates to a diagnosis sometimes. And so bottom line, with Aspen, they're able to identify potential participants in the EMR. They put them kind of in a middleware, if you will, software that can load up those participants for review. Then you can have doctors or other medical staff review those and determine which ones really should be considered and called and which ones probably shouldn't. And then they can push those into RealTime, into the recruitment roster for lead funnel management. And so it's, in my opinion, the biggest value that you can get out of an EMR integration. Now, there's other cool things you can do, like flag a chart that this participant is in a study so that there's no changes in treatment on the EMR side and whatnot. And those are certainly things that we can do as well, it's always depending on if the EMR provider has the capability themselves to provide this level of connectivity. Some do, some don't. Some are willing to work with us, some aren't. So, but those are on a kind of a customer case by case basis on other things we can do around just a pure kind of recruitment model for EMR connectivity.
Yeah, well, and I do think there's a lot of value there. I think it's, for us, we work with, I mean, 6 different EMRs across different clinics, different practices. And as you say, like, look, the big hospital down the street, they're not going to let us connect on the back end into their EMR. There's just no way in hell it's going to happen. Their IT department is like, nah, you're not doing that. But your smaller clinics might be more on board to letting that happen. So that's sort of the first issue from a site level, which obviously depends a lot on your, ownership or, what your site model looks like. What, again, I still think there's a lot of value there. It's even if you can sort of narrow that funnel by a, double digit percentage, I think that's value for the site because you're just doing less, manual searching or manual reading through. But even then, the data is not always accurate. It can be challenging, or it's pulling patient data that's too old, patients that aren't engaged. So again, it's still it's less of a shotgun. It's more laser, less shotgun, but still, I think it has its own challenges. The things I've heard that I'm not real clear on are EMR to EDC or EMR to eSource mapping, which I don't love the idea of. I don't know if that's even something you guys are dabbling in. I know some others are, but that's where I feel like there's maybe less value for, especially, more, or I guess less traditional site models where, you're not just hooked into one EMR and using that to make or to, source your all of your research data.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a different model than you and I work in, Brad, or I used to work in.
Agree.
We don't use, and at least at my site. And I was also going to make a point about the doctor referral aspect and the EMR mining. Just one last point on that. We worked with over 100 different PIs over the course of my tenure at my site, and the one thing we could never do was get doctors to refer at a high level. I mean, it was crazy, and
Still a problem.
they're so busy they won't do it. And so to me, the EMR mining sort of takes the place of that we can actually go into their EMR and pull the participants out. We still give them that full review capability, but we put it in front of them in a silver platter, and they just basically say, yeah, you can call these, or, call these, don't call these. And when you start to have that doctor level, EMR level referral, the percentage of those patients that end up qualifying and randomizing your studies much, much higher than lead generation through any kind of social media type of platform. So, that's where I think you can see a lot of the value. Now, as it relates to the data coming into eSource from an EMR, that's something you're going to see a lot in oncology. In oncology, EMR is used in many cases.
More standard of care data.
Of course, yeah, or standard of care. And so, we do have customers that are doing that today. We are looking at, as part of our roadmap, having some connectivity for data purposes. It's not a super priority for us because oncology is not real-time strong suit. While we do have some oncology customers and they seem to be loving the system, the vast majority of our customers are not in the oncology world. So we just don't see a lot of need for that type of connectivity. The one thing I thought you were going to go to is eSource connectivity to EDC. And that's the one thing that everybody wants. And, I'll just say we're working on it.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's really intuitive. And I think, you can get, I feel like there's a lot of efficiencies there, especially if, I don't know, if we're using Rave and they can provide whatever that is, that coding or those ECFR guidelines, it's very easy to map. Should be. I mean, again, I'm not a tech guy. I don't know. Seems like it should be easy enough to map those data points across to where they need to go, which no more double data entry. I mean, eSource is great efficiency, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're still entering that data again somewhere else manually, right? At least for the time being.
Yep. And that's a bummer that we can't solve the transcription problem quite yet. There's no question, though, that what we are solving from an efficiency standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, the efficiencies that we're creating with the CROs and the sponsors make eSource still very valuable and very much worth adopting. But the transcription over to EDC is the one last component that is yet to be solved, and we certainly hope to pioneer that.
Well, I do want to go back, just touch on the EMR abstraction, from referring physicians. I think that's a beautiful thing that solves maybe a huge problem. I know you touched on it, but I also think the bigger, more important part of it is process. Like, it's one thing to have the tool, but then to give sites the ability to engage referring physicians. I mean, if I can go to a referring physician, like you said, if they send me patients, they'll go, yeah, sure. You'll never hear a word. You'll never hear a word from them again. They're busy.
We
But if you
tried,
can go to them,
tried everything.
well, right. But if you can go to them and say, hey, actually, you've got 5 patients coming in this week.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are. They come in Monday at 10, Tuesday at 12. Take a look. Maybe engage them in just a brief conversation. Make it, see their interest level. If you can really spoon feed that to them through, using those EMR tools, I think that's where it gets really exciting for a site. And then if you can throw in maybe maybe have some DCT tools that you can use as a site, maybe you can even start the conversation while they're still in their treating physician's office. And I know that's, a whole nother topic, right? Like communicating with patients through, telehealth and, more DCT type technologies. Is that something that RealTime is dipping their toes into as well?
Big time. Yes. So, man, thank you. I didn't know if we'd have a chance to talk about our new Engage solutions, but I think this is a great opportunity. So, and again, what I mentioned earlier about bringing the patient into this ecosystem and putting them at the forefront of our thoughts. We just came out with our participant portal. So now participants that are in studies for sites that are using RealTime will have their own portal, and they'll be able to see their visits, stay connected with their site by simply having readily available contact information for the site. It provides them with notifications, push notifications, visit reminders. But we can also, speaking to DCTs, we can push forms to them. So e-source documents, diaries. So ePro, eCo is built in. We can also do e-consent through that. And then the thing that actually took the longest to add into this was the virtual visit capability. So now we're able to actually have like a FaceTime-like visit with subjects where they don't have to even come to our office. We can do a safety check. We can ask them the questions, collect the data completely virtually. So it is an exciting time that, technology has gotten to the point that sites can now have their own technology to support all of these new capabilities. And I'll just say it again around being able to push forms, ePro, eCOA, virtual visits, and e-consent. Now, I do believe, like you were saying, I don't think we can take sites fully out of the equation most of the time. We need doctors to touch patients and perform physical exams. We've got to, draw labs, perform other diagnostic testing that can't be performed in somebody's house. But maybe we can do a screening visit and do all that stuff and then have the next 4 follow-up visits all be completely remote. What a convenience for the patient. What a convenience for the site and the sponsor, right? And I think what we're going to see with this is greater patient satisfaction, number one, greater retention. It's going to be easier for participants to participate, and they're going to just be more connected. And I think that alone is going to help them stay more engaged with the study and the site. And this is going to translate into real dollars. And then on top of that, when patients finish their visit, we're pushing a satisfaction survey to them. How was your visit today? Was it good? Was it bad? Tell us what you did and didn't like. And we can now stratify that to our staff. Maybe we have patients, every time they see Sally, they're happy as can be. Every time they see Billy, they're not happy. So we need to go talk to Billy and see what he's doing. And we need to make sure that he's engaging with our patients and keeping them retained in our studies and happy. So, we're really excited to bring patients into clinical research on a whole new level. And again, I think there's so many benefits, but probably the biggest one, quite honestly, is dollars. We're gonna keep patients in studies. That translates into a lot of dollars for the sites and for the sponsors and the CROs. We're going to compress timelines. It's going to make it easier to recruit and get our patients in our studies and have them actually complete.
Yeah, and then for as a site, it's it's time, and time is money, right? So again, the less time, and I think there are tools like this. I don't know that And actually, what I appreciate about like Engage is that it does put the site sort of in control, right? So just like you said, yeah, maybe I can't do every visit with this, but if I can screen the patient, if I can have the consent conversation and do an e-consent, because think about how many times you do approach a patient, bring them on site, you get through the consent process only to realize something comes up. Oh, they're disqualified. Oh, they can't do it. Well, you've wasted maybe an hour of somebody
Yeah.
traveling, coming
Yeah.
on site. You got to pay them.
Hmm.
It's a problem, right? And I also think people really underestimate the points of contact that happen between study visits. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I think people are insane to think like it's a nice, clean visit schedule, and you're like, okay, see you in a month, and then you don't hear from the patient. No, you hear from the patient all the time. Well, now at least you can keep that in a one place and one platform. They're not texting one guy and calling another coordinator, and who knows where this information is all flowing. Now you've got a place where it can all live together.
Well, you bring up a great point. I mean, the one thing that we would not do is email a consent form to a subject. To me, that's like the quickest and easiest way to get them disinterested in your study. You'll never see them again. You read through a consent, it can be downright scary sometimes what it says from a risk perspective and, oh, we're going to do all this to you. So I think having that human touch and being able to walk through and talk through a consent with a patient, it's an art form. And if it's not done right, it can be the difference between somebody being willing to participate and not. And so now to be able to do that virtually, to be able to put a consent form on their screen, but then actually still have a face-to-face connection with them and talk through the consent with them virtually, I believe is a huge opportunity to do exactly what you said, save them a trip, save a lot of time, because if they're not interested, we disconnect and we're done, right? Or we can sign that consent and, hey, come on in, let's get your screening visit started and we'll see you in a little while. So I think that can be a huge efficiency as well.
Well, and something I'm noticing more and more. I mean, it's both, right? Like there are certainly parts of the patient population who want to come in. They want to, see you. They want to talk to you. That's great. We love that. But there's also plenty who like they won't even answer their phones. You got to text with them. So they're sure as hell not just going to come on site on a whim. So if you can at least start building the relationship with a tool like Engage, where you can look at each other, you can engage with each other, and get that conversation off on the right foot. Because it's like you said, I mean, that's the only real chance you have to sort of give them the information they need. And if you do a bad job of it, they're just extremely unlikely to participate, or maybe to ever participate in the trial again, for that
Yeah.
matter. Right? I mean, there's oftentimes more on the line than I think people sometimes can appreciate as well. So if it's just another tool to help you get a foot in the door, so that you can provide them with information, then that could prove extremely valuable. I mean, again, I think it's people don't always appreciate that if they're not constantly communicating with patients every day.
Well, and let's face it, we live in a virtual world more and more, especially post COVID. Lots of doctor visits are happening virtually now. I know several people that see their doctor completely virtually. And then, I mean, I don't remember the last time I went to a supermarket, to be honest with you. I just order all my food delivered right to my door. And so I think
Right.
if people can stay home and participate and be involved, it's going to work in this day and age.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think this is Daniel Fox here, Rick pioneering the fall of talk down tech. And, I think again, sites are looking for these options, right? And the ways that they can control them. I'm hoping the days of sponsors saying, here's 10 systems, good luck, starts to go away. And we do begin to really bring these things to the table as sites. And frankly, the ones that do, I think will come out on top. We all want the same stuff here,
Yeah.
same thing, but we're still kind of fighting each other over some of the details, I think.
Well, I appreciate that from Dr. Fox. And there's no question that I feel like it's just a matter of consideration in a lot of cases that, I want to be careful with my words, but I feel like, the CROs are looking for a solution that's going to help them be efficient when they run their trial, but they're simply not considering how efficient is that going to be for my sites. And look, that's where the data is collected. That's where the patients are seen. Like that has to be an efficient and highly regulated world. And anything that we do that creates chaos or challenges with efficiencies actually takes away from our ability to make sure that we're following the protocol and meeting regulation. It opens us up to other risk that we really don't want to open ourselves up to. So I think it's really just a matter of consideration. Yes, we want something that's going to be efficient for us, but let's make sure it's something that's going to help our sites as well.
And I don't, those two things don't have to be at odds, right? I mean, there's no reason those two things can't be both happen at the same time. So I'm with you there. And again, I think there's a shift. There's a little bit of a shift, and sites are starting to stand up a little more and use the leverage that they have. Because again, I mean, you can't do it without them.
I hope the sites will fight for connectivity, interconnectivity. Like, yes, we now own our own data. We have our systems. This is the ISF that we use. This is the eSource solution that we use. I understand you're using an eTMF. I know you're using an EDC system. We want to connect to it. We want to deliver our deliverables to you electronically. But the only way that we get connected to the Medidata Raves of the world, or if the CROs are pushing Medidata Rave to make it happen, to provide the tools, the only way that, the other eTMF vendors out there, I won't use names, are going to open their doors to the site solutions is if somebody kind of asks them to really nicely. And so hopefully we can all push for that. And you're right. I mean, if those connections were built and put in place, it could create such an amazing, efficient ecosystem for how sites deliver their deliverables up to the CROs.
No, I agree 100%. Anything else before we sign off here? Where can people learn more about RealTime? Jeff, just let's give a little shout out. He's
Hey, Jeff, always good to see you, buddy. A little amen from Jeff Stein made my day. I appreciate that. No, I mean, I feel like we touched on a lot of great stuff, and I'm always happy to be here. Brad, I appreciate what you're doing. And so I definitely want to be a part of it and be a part of the voice and be a part of the solution at the end of the day. But I don't want people to think that we're not listening. We're always listening. We're always trying to get better. So, your feedback is welcome at RealTime. And for those of you that do want to know more about RealTime, you can go to our website, realtime-ctms.com, and fill out one of the many forms on there. And, we'll be in touch, and we'd love to show you more of our capabilities.
Yeah, again, I've used RealTime multiple times in the past, using them in right now. Again, great customer service. So many opportunities to have training to walk you and your team through how to use it, which hasn't always been the case with other CTMS systems I've used. So, take advantage of that. I'm always happy to talk to people about it as well if they have questions, just as an unbiased site perspective. But otherwise, Rick, thanks for coming on, man. I hope we can drag you out to Arizona next year, and our new site conference. That would be pretty sick.
Brad, it was a pleasure, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there.
Rock and roll. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too, man.
All right.